I landed in Nashville at 6:15 in the morning, jet-lagged, underslept, and feeling like I'd just earned myself the quietest week of my life. And by 7:02 a.m., I was standing in a pile of splintered oak and broken tile where my house used to be. Not damaged, not vandalized, demolished. There's a particular sound your brain makes when it can't process what your eyes are seeing. It's not a scream, it's not a thought, it's just static. I came around that last bend on Lakeview Drive, the one where the trees open up and you get your first look at the water, and instead of my guest wing catching the morning light, there was sky. Just empty Tennessee sky, where 2,400 square feet of stone and timber had been. In the east side of my main house, my 1962 lake mansion I'd spent $3.8 million restoring, was ripped open like someone had taken a bite out of it. There was construction fencing around the property, orange plastic flapping in the breeze, and stapled to what remained of my front door was a yellow notice, curling at the corners from March rain. Delinquent dues. 8 months unpaid. Authorized demolition. Signed by Karen Hollis, HOA president. I read it 3 times. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the alternative was throwing up. My HOA dues had been on autopay for 6 years. What Karen didn't know, what she never bothered to check, was that I don't just own a house in Lakeview Heights. I own all 847 acres it sits on. Every road, every common area, the lake, the ground beneath all 340 homes, including hers. And that's when the static in my head turned into something else, something colder. Let me back up a second. I've been in Dubai for 8 months, running a $340 million mixed-use project, 14-hour days, contractors in 3 languages, municipal permits that felt like chess matches. We delivered early and $4 million under budget. I got on that plane feeling like I'd earned the right to come home to quiet. Lakeview Heights was supposed to be that quiet. Built in 1962 by a developer smart enough, or greedy enough, to sell the houses but keep the land. A ground lease community. Every homeowner owns their structure, but they lease the dirt beneath it. In 2019, I bought the master deed from the original developer's estate for $28 million through my company, Blackwood Capital Holdings. It wasn't a secret. It was recorded with the county. It was in every title packet, every mortgage file. But most people don't read the fine print when the lawn looks pretty and the lake sparkles. Karen certainly hadn't. I stood in the rubble of my guest wing that morning. Imported Portuguese tile smashed into powder, Asheville cabinetry splintered, and called my attorney, Richard Cole. They demolished my house, I told him. Silence. Say that again. By 10:30 a.m., Richard was standing beside me in the debris, hands in his coat pockets, eyes scanning like he was measuring angles for a case he already knew was going to be catastrophic. This isn't an HOA dispute, he said quietly. This is tortious destruction of private property. Exposure. I asked. He did the math without blinking. $6 million to start. Possibly more. They have $380,000 in reserves. He looked at me. I know. And they don't own the land they demolished on. That's when his expression shifted. You're thinking about the ground leases. I am. Because buried in those 1962 lease agreements, still binding, still active, was a clause. Section 14, paragraph 3. Material breach. If a leaseholder or any organization under their direction causes damage to ground lessor property, the lease may be terminated. Karen hadn't just demolished my house. She'd done it on land I owned. And she'd done it as a leaseholder. We met the board the next morning. 8 people around a table that suddenly felt smaller than it should have. Karen at the head, posture stiff, confidence polished. We followed procedure, she said. The property appeared abandoned. My dues were paid, I said evenly. Check your bank records. They had the payment. They'd labeled it unidentified commercial transfer because it came from a corporate account instead of a personal one. No one picked up a phone. No one ran a county records search. They just sent bulldozers. Then their attorney, Philip Garrett, opened the master deed, and the air changed. So, to confirm, he said slowly, Blackwood Capital owns all land within the development boundary? Yes, Richard replied. Meaning homeowners own their structures, but not the land beneath them? Yes. Karen blinked like someone had turned the lights on too bright. That can't be right. It's been right since 1962, Philip said. And that was the twist. Not for me. I'd known it for years, but for everyone else in that room. The realization that the authority they thought they had stopped at the dirt line. The silence was heavy enough to hear breathing. What do you want? Karen finally asked. I want my house back, I said, which you can't give me. So we'll start with $6 million. They thought I was bluffing. I wasn't. The lawsuit hit court April 3rd. Judge Warren Holloway, a man who reads every page before he speaks, flipped through the ground lease and stopped at Section 14. Counsel, he said to the HOA's attorney, how is this not textbook material breach? They tried implicit consent. They tried community standards. They tried abandoned property ordinance. Holloway shut it down in under an hour. Bylaws do not override property law, he said. When the damages ruling came down May 2nd, it was surgical. $6 million in compensatory damages. $1.2 million in punitive damages, personally against Karen. She filed for bankruptcy 12 days later. And that's where most people would have stopped. Taken the judgment, rebuilt, moved on. But I wasn't most people. I'd spent 30 years building things on the certainty of contracts. If I let this slide, if I signaled that you could demolish a landowner's home and negotiate your way out of it, what exactly was I saying about the value of ownership? So we sent the formal ground lease termination notice. 30 days. Her mortgage lender got a copy. Without a ground lease, her $680,000 home was just a structure sitting on land she no longer had the right to occupy. Appraised at $190,000 without land rights. The bank called her $412,000 loan due. She tried to argue retaliation in bankruptcy court. The judge reviewed Holloway's findings. Termination stands, he said. Karen listed her house for sale at $195,000. No one wanted a house without land. She sold it to a demolition contractor for $87,000, salvage value, and moved into an apartment in Franklin. Quietly. No farewell post. No speech. Just a moving truck and a door closing. The 6 other board members who'd voted with her, 5 settled quickly. $85,000 each in written acknowledgments of breach. One tried to fight. He paid $110,000 3 weeks later. The HOA reserves were seized. The organization dissolved with 79% homeowner approval. A new board formed, led by the 2 members who had resigned in protest before the demolition. And here's the part that surprised even me. The community came to me. Not angry, not defensive, prepared. 40 pages of proposals for a new ground lease framework. Clear disclosures, annual meetings, plain language summaries in every real estate transaction. Robert Marsh, the guy who'd voted no from the beginning, looked at me across a conference table and said, if we'd understood this better 5 years ago, none of this would have happened. He was right. I'd been patient, quiet, passive. I assumed legal disclosure was enough. It wasn't. Ambiguity is fertile soil for arrogance. We negotiated for 47 days. 99-year renewable leases. Caps on increases. Transparent obligations. Explicit limits on HOA authority. Annual community meeting with me present. Clarity instead of assumption. By October, my new East Wing was rising. 3,200 square feet instead of 2,400. Bigger. Balanced. As if it had always been meant to be that way. One night in November, Richard sat on my deck with bourbon in his hand, looking at the rebuilt house glowing against the lake. Was it worth it? He asked. I thought about Karen standing in that courtroom, about her calling me an extortionist for enforcing a clause she'd never read, about her authorizing demolition without a 10-minute record search. I didn't destroy her, I said. She destroyed herself. There's a lesson in that, if you're willing to see it. Power without comprehension isn't authority, it's liability. Karen confused a board position with ownership. She confused procedure with permission. She confused silence with weakness. She saw an empty house and assumed abandonment. What she never asked was, who owns the ground beneath it? And that's the thing about land, it doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It just waits. 6 months after standing in rubble, I stood in the same spot watching fresh timber rise under a crane's slow, patient swing. The lake was still. The new HOA was functional. Property values had recovered. The community understood exactly what they owned and what they didn't. My house was bigger, stronger, paid for. Karen's was gone. So here's the question I'll leave you with. When someone crosses a line that fundamental is enforcing the contract, justice, or revenge, at what point does defending your rights become too much? I know where I stand, but I'm curious where you do. If you've ever dealt with an HOA, a contract dispute, or someone who mistook authority for ownership, tell me what you would have done. Would you have stopped at the $6 million? Or would you have enforced the ground beneath their feet? Let's talk about it.